Welcome friends to this course on understanding Absurdist drama. We are in week 2 and this is going to be lecture number 1. Today we'll discuss Samuel Beckett as an Absurdist playwright. We will discuss his brief biography, his major works and also the major themes that his writings reflect. Samuel Beckett was one of the most influential theatre writer, novelist, poet, director of the 20th century Europe. He was born on April 13, 1906 in Dublin, Ireland. He received his education at Trinity College, Dublin, where his early exposure to classical literature, philosophy and languages helped shape his intellectual foundation. Later, he moved to Paris, where he formed a close relationship with James Joyce, one of the most influential modernist writers of the 20th century. Joyce was Beckett's mentor, who would deeply influence Beckett's literary trajectory. Beckett's novels, plays, short stories are best known for exploring existentialist themes, particularly the absurdity of existence and the meaninglessness of life. His exploration of the limits of language and the emptiness of existence resonated deeply with the post-World War II generation grappling with the disillusionment and trauma. Beckett's work, often bleak and minimalistic, reflects a world where certainty is absent and individuals are left to find meaning on their own terms. In 1969, Beckett was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature. The Nobel Committee praised his writing for its stark, unflinching portrayal of the human experience. Beckett passed away on December 22, 1989 in Paris, France, leaving behind a profound legacy. Some of the best prose works by Samuel Beckett include his most famous short story collection, More Pricks Than Kicks, and his novels, Murphy, What, Molly, Malone Dies, and The Unnameable. More Pricks Than Kicks is an interrelated collection of short stories which centers on the character of Bella Shua, a recurring figure in Beckett's first novel, which was published very late, titled Dream of a Fair Two Middling Women. The stories are darkly humorous and they detail Bella Shua's interactions with friends, lovers, families, as he ambles through life with a sense of indifference and detachment. From failed romantic endeavors to absurd encounters with death, the stories are linked by a recurring theme of existential futility. Murphy was Beckett's first published novel. It explores the story of its tutelar character, Murphy. The novel begins with a scene where Murphy has tied himself to the chair and he is naked and the chair is rolling back and forth. Murphy wants to escape the physical world and retreat into the realm of mind. Murphy's rejection of the material world leads him to work at a mental institution where he explores the boundaries between sanity and madness. Throughout the novel, Murphy oscillates between a desire for non-being and inability to fully escape the demands of the physical world. In the novel, through Murphy, Beckett is trying to explore the dualism of mind-body. Murphy is a solipsist and therefore he is seeking for the disintegration or dismemberment of his own body. He wants to live the life of the mind neglecting body. What is the next novel that Beckett published? The novel is about breakdown of communication and the limitations of language, which always fails to express human mind, its thoughts, feelings, guilts, and other such emotions. Written during Beckett's time in hiding during World War II, Watt is an absurdist novel that chronicles the journey of the title character Watt as he becomes a servant in the house of Mr. Knott. The novel is marked by its nonsensical logic and language, and Watt's experiences reflect the breakdown of meaning in both thought and communication. Watt's time in Mr. Knott's house becomes a surreal experience where even basic actions and thoughts are rendered absurd and incomprehensible. Beckett wrote a trilogy of novels which includes Molly, Malone Dies, and The Unnameable. Molly is split into two parts. The first part is narrated by Molly, who wanders aimlessly seeking his mother while reflecting his deteriorating physical and mental state. The second part is narrated by Moran, a detective hired to find Molly, though his search leads to his own breakdown and disintegration. The novel's structure, with its circularity and the blurring of boundaries between the two narrators, reflects Beckett's growing interest in the impossibility of meaning and the absurdity of human existence. In fact, Molly and Moran's quest for meaning leads them to nowhere. They are searching for meaning which cannot be found, and therefore they realize that it is better to do away with the illusion of meaning itself. Malone Dies is the next novel of the trilogy, which explores the life of Malone, who is lying on his bed awaiting his death. As he lies in bed, Malone entertains himself by telling stories about characters like Sappho and Macman, all while reflecting on his own decaying body and impending death. The novel is both an exploration of death and meditation on the power of storytelling as a means of confronting one's fate. Malone Dies is an exploration of the themes of death, decay, disintegration, and also of existential despair. As human beings grapple with this existential despair, they realize that there is no end to their suffering and sorrow. The Unnameable is the final novel in Beckett's trilogy, and it is a stream of consciousness narrative. It is about a disembodied voice struggles to make sense of its own existence. The novel lacks any real plot or structure, focusing instead on the narrator's attempts to define itself only to continually fail. The voice is caught in a cycle of self-doubt, existential despair, and the breakdown of language as it grapples with the impossibility of self-definition. The novels of Samuel Beckett are explorations of existential themes, and they are written in minimalist style, often suggesting that there is no inherent meaning of life, and thereby in these novels Beckett is suggesting the condition of absurdity as far as human life and human fate is concerned. His protagonists like Molly, Malone and Watt grapple with the absurdity of existence, alienation and the search for meaning in an often incomprehensible world. These novels can often be called anti-novels as they lack coherent plot, coherent structure, and in some of them there is no sense of time and place even. These anti-novels are filled with repetitive circular structures and stripped down prose, resisting closure and coherence. The emphasis is on the internal monologue and the character's inability to convey their thoughts effectively, making language itself a central subject of critique. Although Beckett's novels are equally unique and famous, yet Beckett is now mostly remembered for the plays that he wrote. Some of his most famous plays include Waiting for Godot, Endgame, Krapp's Last Tape, Happy Days, Not I, Come and Go, What, Where. Waiting for Godot is an absurdist play in which two characters, Vladimir and Estragon, wait for a mysterious figure named Godot who never arrives. The play is structured around two acts in which the characters engage in a repetitive dialogue and encounter two other characters, Pozo and his servant Lucky. Despite the lack of traditional plot, the play reflects the absurdity of human existence, with the act of waiting symbolizing the search for meaning in a meaningless world. This play is very interesting as we find out that two trams, Vladimir and Estragon, they are waiting for Godot on a roadside in somewhere, because Vladimir and Estragon are waiting for Godot and Godot has promised them to come. They cannot go anywhere. While they are waiting for Godot, they have to pass their time, and therefore they indulge in meaningless conversations. At times they talk about beautiful memories that they had, of which they don't remember anything in particular. They also contemplate suicide. After a while, they encounter another set of pairs, Pozo, the master, and his servant Lucky. Vladimir and Estragon, they have a conversation with Pozo and Lucky in order to pass their time. Later on, a boy comes and informs them that Godot will not come today, rather Godot will come tomorrow. This condition of waiting in the play reflects absurdity of existence. The endless waiting with no resolution reflects the futility of human life. The characters' actions, as I have already told, are repetitive, reflecting the cyclical nature of existence. Endgame is another famous play by Samuel Beckett. In the play, we have two pairs. One pair is that of a master named Ham and his servant named Clough. We also have the parents of Ham, who are named Nag and Nell. Ham is blind and unable to stand and is attended by Clough, who is unable to sit. They are joined by Nag and Nell, who live in dustbins. The play is marked by a sense of confinement, as the characters repeat mundane actions while contemplating their inevitable end. The play is unusual because we have two characters, Nag and Nell, who are lying in a dustbin. What are they doing in that dustbin? Whether they have been forcibly left into that dustbin, or it is so that they don't want to come out of that dustbin, we don't know anything for certain. And master is also blind. What does it communicate? What is the meaning of the play? It becomes very difficult to ascertain, to find out. However, we can argue that Endgame explores the idea of life as a repetitive, pointless cycle that ends only in death. The characters are trapped in an endless cycle of waiting for death with no hope of escape. Their physical and emotional isolation also underscores the themes of existential loneliness in a world where life itself is a slow march towards death. Crabbe's Last Tape is another important play by Samuel Beckett. It recounts the story of Crabbe, an old man who listens to recordings of himself made years earlier on his birthday. As he replays the tapes, he reflects on his younger self's hopes and ambitions, contrasting them with his current state of disappointment and regret. Crabbe's act of recording and listening to his past self highlights the tension between the man he was and the man he has become. Crabbe's Last Tape is a play which explores how an older man remembers his younger days. It focuses on his memories, his experiences, his desires, his guilts, his regrets, and there are so many other existential issues that have been explored by Beckett in the play through Crabbe's Last Tape. Happy Days is about a woman named Winnie who is buried up to her waist in the first act and up to her neck in the second act. Despite her physical entrapment, Winnie remains optimistic, engaging in repetitive daily routines, conversing with her mostly silent husband Willie. Her unrelenting cheerfulness in the face of her absurd predicament reflects Beckett's exploration of the human capacity for hope even in the most hopeless situation. Not I is another intense, fragmented monologue delivered by a character referred to as Mouth, who speaks at a rapid pace about a traumatic event from her past. The speaker's face is illuminated while the rest of the stage is in darkness. The disembodied voice of the face reflects Beckett's interest in the breakdown of identity and the struggle to communicate personal trauma. Not I also emphasizes the disconnection between mind and body as well as the isolation that comes from being unable to fully articulate one's inner pain. What and Where was a letter play by Samuel Beckett, which is minimalistic. The play has four characters, Bam, Bem, Bim, Bom, who question and accuse each other in a repetitive cycle. The characters' interactions highlight the dynamics of power, with interrogation serving as a metaphor for the search of meaning. The play also underscores the emptiness and futility of the characters' search for answers, reinforcing Beckett's existentialist thoughts. Beckett would also write radio plays, mostly for BBC, and in these plays, Beckett would continue to explore existential issues which he had explored in his novels and plays, which we have already discussed. All That Fall is Beckett's first radio play and is centered around an elderly woman, Maddie Rooney, who embarks on a journey to the railway station to meet her blind husband, Dan Rooney, and bring him home. Along the way, she encounters various people and experiences the struggles of old age and physical decline. When Dan arrives, he reveals that a child had fallen from the train, a mysterious event that adds to the play's atmosphere of existential certainty, or uncertainty to say. Embers, another minimalist radio play that Beckett wrote, centers on Henry, who sits by the sea, attempting to make sense of his memories, fears, and guilt. He converses with the voices in his head, particularly that of his dead father, and reflects on his troubled relationship with his wife, Ada. Words and Music is an experimental radio play wherein two characters, Words and Music, are commanded by Crook to collaborate and produce an artistic piece. The play explores the interaction between language and music, with words delivering disjointed and abstract monologues, while music responds with compositions. The play explores the inability of words to fully express human experience, emphasizing the need for music to convey what language fails to articulate. Another very short but enigmatic radio play by Beckett was Rough for Radio 1, which is a conversation between two characters, he and she. They represent conflicting perspectives on the nature of communication and artistic creation. These radio plays demonstrate Beckett's exploration of sound, memory, and the limits of communication. Each play delves into the themes of isolation, guilt, and the futility of human efforts to find meaning in an indifferent world. Now we have discussed so far the short summary of the novels and plays by Samuel Beckett. And what do we gather from these novels and from these plays? There are some major philosophical precepts that Beckett highlights, and we'll discuss it one by one. One of the most important philosophical principles that Beckett proposes is regarding the absurdity of human existence. Beckett says that life is inherently meaningless. Even though we try our level best to find out some meaning to it, we won't be successful. Beckett's plays often depict characters who are stuck in repetitive, pointless actions. His work aligns with existentialist philosophy and the theatre of the absurd, illustrating that life lacks purpose or ultimate significance. This we can understand through the characters of Vladimir and Estragon in Waiting for Godot, where they are waiting for Godot, not knowing whether Godot has promised them to come or not, whether Godot will come or not, whether Godot will come on Monday or on Saturday or on Sunday, whether Godot will come in the morning or in the afternoon or in the evening. They do not know when Godot will come, where Godot will come, whether Godot will come or not, yet they are waiting for Godot. And their waiting symbolizes futile wait of human beings in search of their redemption, or human beings searching or rather waiting for their death. Another very important feature of Beckett's plays and of novels is the theme of isolation and loneliness that Beckett explores. Many of Beckett's characters exist in states of profound isolation, whether physically, emotionally, or psychologically. Despite often being paired with other characters, they fail to meaningfully communicate or connect, emphasizing the loneliness of the human condition. As you would observe in Waiting for Godot, although Vladimir and Estragon, they are together, yet they cannot communicate their private nightmares to each other. Although Pojo and Lucky are together, yet Pojo does not consider Lucky to be a human being. He considers Lucky to be inferior. In fact, there is almost no communication between Pojo and Lucky unless Lucky is required for menial labor that Pojo wants Lucky to perform. Similarly, in the novel Murphy, you might have observed that Murphy wants to lead a life of isolation. So almost all Beckettian characters, they prefer loneliness, they prefer isolation, and that preference is because of acknowledgement of the fact that human life is marked by inherent loneliness and isolation. Another very important feature of Beckett's plays is the theme of death and decay. Beckett's works are permeated by a sense of inevitable death and decay of the body and mind. His characters often face their impending demise with a sense of resignation, struggling with deterioration of their physical and mental faculties. If one has read plays like Endgame or Kraft's Last Tape or Happy Days for that matter, one can easily understand that most of his characters are trapped into waiting for death. They have grown older, they have nowhere to go, they don't have people in their lives with whom they can communicate their anxieties, their fears, their guilts or their other emotions, and therefore all these characters are helplessly waiting for the arrival of death. And therefore plays of Beckett are marked by the representations of both bodily decay and impending death. As we have already discussed that most of the plays by Beckett talk about the limits of human language. If you read his plays, you will find out that dialogues are very short. In fact, most of the sentences are either 2-word long, 3-word long, sometimes even 1-word long. And that has a reason. Beckett thought, unlike Joyce, who considered that truth can be known through language and reality can be represented through language, Beckett's philosophy was the philosophy of silence. Beckett understood that in order to convey the truth, silence must be used. And as a consequence, Beckett's language use is minimalist. There is a play by Beckett called Breath, wherein you don't have any words used. In fact, you go to theatre, you just hear various patterns of breathing and you return. So, Beckett knew that language fails to communicate human thought, human emotions, human feelings, and therefore Beckett's reliance on language to communicate his ideas was minimal. Another important feature of Beckettian plays was the theme of freedom and paralysis it causes. We have already discussed the issue of freedom while reading Sartre and Kierkegaard and Camus, and we know that human beings have freedom to choose. In Beckettian universe, characters have freedom to choose, but they suffer from a very deep, profound philosophical paralysis. Like in Waiting for Godot, Vladimir and Estragon, they have freedom either to wait for Godot or to go. They want to go, but they cannot go because of existential paralysis that they are experiencing. They do not know where to go. And of course, this issue we will discuss in detail when we would discuss the play Waiting for Godot in the classes to come. Finally, there are scholars and critics who argue that plays of Beckett are marked by a philosophy of nihilism and despair. They represent a nihilistic worldview where life lacks any inherent meaning or value. Characters experience despair in their attempts to understand their place in a world devoid of purpose or divine guidance. And this is applicable to almost all the major works, which include his poems, his short stories, his novels, his radio plays, almost every genre in which Beckett experimented. His characters, they know that they cannot know life. They know that nothing is certain about life. They know that life is inherently meaningless, yet they hopelessly wait for the death and its arrival. And therefore one has to understand that his novels present often a bleak, dark worldview which can be equated with the philosophy of nihilism and despair. So, thank you everyone. In the next class, we'll discuss a play by Samuel Beckett titled Waiting for Godot in detail.